Hey friends, so I wanted to do an update for this week and figured I'd start it off with harvesting some of my wintergreens. As you can see, some of the ones in smaller containers are looking a little leggy and floppy, and that's just probably partially a nutrient issue, partially a moisture control issue, and partially a root issue. But I'm just going to go ahead and take my herb snips and cut off the majority of these outer leaves. And I make sure to leave the heart intact where the new leaves are coming out of. Otherwise it won't continue producing. And now that I've got that cleaned up, I'd like to just have a peek at these roots. So yeah, it's getting a little bit on the pot bound side. That's probably one of the reasons it's not doing all that well. But once I have harvested today, then I will give this whole tray some fertilizer. I don't generally recommend fertilizing any seedlings, but if you are harvesting lettuces or if you're growing other things indoors like tomatoes or peppers, it's a good idea to give them fertilizer any time you take something away from them, because, or even just as they get quite large, because that's a sign that they're using the nutrients available to them. And they can't do that indefinitely without something being put back in. My giant onions are getting quite large, but they're also getting quite floppy. So now's a good time, especially if you have a dish in the kitchen that you want to cook that uses green onions. Now's a good time to just take off any long greens that are pulling your onions sideways, just to help keep them upright, keep them from tangling. And then over here you can also see, so these are not the giant onions, these are the storage onions. They're also doing really well. And there's just one there that's flopping over. And I'll just cut those. You can of course trim them down, especially if they're getting tangled. And then if we can just zoom in over here through the onions, you can see the alyssum have begun to bloom. So I started some from my own seed that's quite old, and I also started some for my sister-in-law whose seed was fresh, and hers are doing considerably better. My seed still germinated and it will eventually still flower, but it definitely doesn't have the vigor that the fresh seed does. But my seed is also probably going on about 10 years old, so I think I'm just gonna have to buy fresh for next year. And then on this shelf we again have some more of the storage onion types. One of the things I like about these bags is you can have a peek at the roots. Sorry, the light is really bright. And of course in this tray we've got our lovely little asparagus seedlings. They are doing really well. They're making these lovely little ferny. They look a bit like a dill. Hard to get on camera because they're so fine. But they're doing really well as well. And we've got one renegade tomato here. And if I can get him into frame, I'll just tip him sideways. He's actually got some blooms at the very end of him. Now this is probably a full-size tomato. This is not growing true to type. It's very fuzzy compared to the micro tomatoes that I'm trying to grow. But I will let it fruit these couple of tomatoes, and then I will snip out this lead because that's more tomatoes than I want it to. I'll just pinch that off right now. I don't want it to be producing more of a lead because that's as many tomatoes as I want to try and encourage and support indoors, and I don't want a 4-foot tall tomato inside. We also have here in the back, I'll just bring it up front. So this is our sweet potato. So today is the day we're going to be cutting some of these slips away. And I'm just going to go in. I'm going to change the angle here right quick. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and take this down right to the base. I'm just going to snip it off there. Then I've got my cutting, and I'm just going to use my snips again so I don't tear off the stem too badly, and just snip those out and stick them in a cup of water till he roots. I'll do that with a few more. I think we've got at least 2 more in here that are long enough to snip. And you want to have some of these leaf joints in the water. That's generally where the roots will form along the branch nodes. Alright, and then we've got one over here that's really complex. There's a couple of shorter ones attached to the same eye, and I just want to cut out the tall one. So the shorter ones don't have quite enough height on them to fit in the cup well. And there we go. So that is 3 new sweet potato plants just waiting to grow, and there are plenty more to come on this plant. And last but not least, our tomatoes have begun to bloom. Now I've heard of a number of different ways to pollinate them. I have sometimes used a electric toothbrush just to try and vibrate the flowers the same way that wild bumblebees will pollinate them, although I've had them also be pollinated without any intentional effort on my part. The other thing is I am letting them dry out until they're getting a little bit droopy, and I will also need to begin fertilizing them. The reason I let them dry out a little bit is that if I pump them full of as much water as they could possibly want, they will make fruit, but they won't ripen the fruit. So a little bit of stress goes a long way towards actually getting ripe tomato fruits. And last but not least, this week we'll be starting our artichokes from seed. So that's all I've got for you this time. Thanks for watching. We'll see you.